Hi everyone, my name is Chelsea. Welcome to Little Mountain Ranch. I'm happy to have you here with us today. We are doing our first large harvest on our Zone 3B garden here in the central interior of British Columbia, Canada. And as you can see, it is a very, very smoky day. It looks a little bit worse than it is because it cooled off significantly last night and we did have a little bit of rain before that happened. So it's a little bit misty combined with the smoke. So why, you might be asking yourself, would I be out here working in this kind of smoke? Because obviously it's not the best thing for my health. But the reality of farming is that sometimes you need to work in unfavorable conditions because your animals need to be taken care of no matter what. Plants in the garden need to be harvested when they're ready to be harvested. And I have broccoli that if I don't harvest it today, it is going to start loosening. It is already a little bit, you see, because I pushed it off because yesterday was even worse than today for smoke. So these need to get harvested. I'm not sure how many heads of broccoli we're going to end up with in the end, but I also have some beautiful heads of cauliflower. Look at that. Wow. That I need to harvest. I'm doing this harvest myself today. Usually we'll all pitch in together and get the harvest done, but I don't want my kids with their young lungs out here in this smoke. So first things first, we're gonna find the wheelbarrow. Do you know what I just realized? Is that I didn't bring my knife down with me. And my hori knife, which is one of my favorite garden tools, went MIA a couple of days ago in my garden. And I hope that means it's not gone for the entire season. But I'm just gonna run up to the house and grab a knife. I'll be right back. Oh, they're so beautiful. So I am taking the center bunch out and leaving the rest because side shoots will form, as you can see here, and you can harvest off of most broccoli plants all summer long. Whenever I am harvesting, people will inevitably comment that you can eat the stalks and the leaves of broccoli and cauliflower. So you would eat the leaves similarly to the way that you would eat kale. And I don't usually eat the leaves. Sometimes if I have a head like this, I'll chop these up and throw them in whatever recipe I'm making with the broccoli, but I do always use the stalks. So there is a couple more in here that could go for another couple days. So I'm gonna leave those and we'll head down to the cauliflower patch. So far, so good. We are going to have zucchinis very soon. So excited about that. Look at that gorgeous flower. Look at that sweet little sunflower. Isn't that beautiful? Okay, we have some gorgeous cauliflower. Look at that. Another beauty down there. And some cauliflower in here, or broccoli in here too. Look at that beauty. So this one is a perfectly ready cauliflower, and this is one that I left too long. Still completely edible, just not great for storage, so I'll use this one up in lunch or dinner today. I have a really thorough video on growing broccoli and cauliflower, which I'll put up here for you and down in the show notes if you want detailed instructions on how I grow mine. To be fair, I do live in a really great climate because broccoli and cauliflower are cool crops. And we obviously have really cool weather into the spring. Oh my gosh, that looks really dramatic, doesn't it? There are a few tricks that you can apply in most growing zones to make growing broccoli and cauliflower a lot easier. So I just remembered we have one more thing that we need to harvest before we go up into the house. And I wanted to show you one more thing before we head up. I don't want to stay out here for much longer. I've only been out here for around 20 minutes at this point. Probably another 20 minutes to get the cherries off the tree. Again, that's one of those things that I could choose to leave and lose the entire harvest to the birds. And I don't want to do that, so we want to get them off the tree. The high tunnel is protected from the smoke quite a bit, so I have been working down here in the last couple of days. And I'm super happy with the progress that I've made. So beautiful. So check this out, my friends. We are walking through that aisle that was so overgrown a couple of days ago that we weren't even able to get through it. Ta-da! So all this stuff on the ground you see is all tomato branches and leaves that I removed from my tomato plants, and then I trellised them all up. And one of the exciting things that I discovered when I did that were lots of tomatoes underneath all of that foliage that was really overgrown. I even found a tomato that was starting to get a blush. I can't find it again now, but that was starting to get a little bit of a blush. So that's really exciting. I was really unsure about how the harvest was going to go this year. And still at this point, I'm feeling a little bit unsure, but a lot more hopeful than I was before I got all of this pruning done and saw how many tomatoes are actually already starting to form. And the plants are flowering like crazy. So as long as we get a long summer, and long warm summer, hopefully without frost in August like we often do, we should be okay for a good harvest. I still have this aisle over here to take care of, so you can see how many of the tomatoes have kind of come into the aisle. So I still need to prune that one, but I did get this side of this row all the way done, and most of the tomatoes on this side are bush style tomatoes, so I just have them strung up with a little bit of yarn just to give them a little bit of support, but I just need to go in and kind of thin them out a little bit. Look at this. It's like an absolute tomato jungle. These ones are orange Russian tomatoes, a new variety I haven't planted before, and they are so robust. Ooh, it is humid in here. Let's open the door up, let some of that humidity out and cool it off a little bit. It is, actually it's kind of an optimal temperature for growing tomatoes in here. I'll just let some of the humidity out and close it back up again. So most of this smoke is actually coming from fires in British Columbia. Like I mentioned in my last video, we had a bunch of new fires break out over the last week in BC. I think 152 new fires or something like that. But checking the weather report this morning, I may have mentioned this already, but it is supposed to rain for days, which is going to really, really help with this situation, both with the fire risk, but also just with clearing everything out. Honest to goodness, every time I walk past this bed here, it makes me smile. Next year, I might want to turn the herb bed in the front. It's a curved bed that kind of curves around. These are sprout box garden beds. But I might want to fill this one full of brightly colored flowers like this because it just looks so pretty. I would love to have a bunch of these beds everywhere. Let's get up to the cherry trees. We'll start with our little Romeo dwarf cherry tree, which doesn't have very many cherries on it. We can only grow sour cherries here. The sweet cherries just can't handle our cold winters. But last year we had a big enough harvest I was able to make pie filling, and it was delicious. The other thing that we're going to be harvesting copious amounts of in the next probably week are raspberries. Look at this. This is crazy. And they are really, really good this year. Sometimes I find they can be sour. And honestly, with the drought, because raspberries prefer a lot of water, I thought they were going to be awful, but they're so good. This is a Juliet cherry tree, which is very cramped in this spot because I did not realize how large these beautiful sea buckthorns get. And I should have anticipated this, but the raspberries are seriously encroaching upon this little cherry tree. So the plan is to move all of these raspberries and prune back this big girl over here. Sea buckthorn are male or female, and this one is a female. my mail is down there. And I found something really exciting when I was out walking around here yesterday. There is fruit that is forming on here. So these brown ones that just come right off, those ones have not been pollinated, but these green ones here have been. And this is going to be my first year getting sea berries, which I'm so excited about. They're super high in antioxidants and one of the highest levels of vitamin C of any berry. So very excited about that. Look at this bee balm. It's getting huge and beautiful. And this gorgeous plant back here, this is a burdock that made its home here in my forest garden. I didn't plant this here, but I just did a class over on my membership community all about herbs with my friend Jen from Serenity Hill Farmstead, who's an herbalist. And she taught me all about how to harvest burdock and also how to prune it so that I don't get all of the burrs, because that's one of the big issues with burdock is it forms these awful burrs that are super sticky, get into everything, and then it spreads everywhere. So what I'm gonna do is actually prune down all of these branches here that have the burrs on them before they actually get really big and start attaching themselves to everything. And then we will harvest the root of this burdock in the fall and use it to make a tincture, and I'm so excited about it. I'm going to be opening up my membership community again on August 1st, and so far we already have some great content over there. I just started my membership community in May. We already have gardening content over there, herbs, and for August we're going to be doing, excuse me, all things preserving. There is 2 tiers to my membership community. The first tier, the basic tier, I've just started doing a live every 2 weeks for my basic members. It's for all members, so Plus members get access to that as well. Plus members also get access to a monthly Zoom call directly with me to ask me all of your questions. Monthly giveaways. I'm actually giving away my friend Crystal from Woodland Homestead's book, Freeze Fresh, in the Plus membership this month. And then you also have access to my close friends on Instagram, and I post over there just about daily. It's a lot of fun. I'm really enjoying it. I'm very new to it, so it's definitely a learning curve, but it is a really fun way to have direct interaction and to be able to share a little bit more detailed information about a lot of the things that I talk about here on YouTube. So like I said, we're going to open up membership again on the 1st of August, and I'll make sure that I let you know. If you want to be notified when I do new things, have new products or anything like that, I do have an email list and a newsletter, and I'll put a link if you'd like to sign up to that down in the show notes. So this cherry tree here, I don't actually know what it's called because I got it from my sister, who got it from a nursery that had experienced a whole bunch of frost damage, and they had a whole bunch of free fruit trees. So I planted this one. It's done incredibly well in our cold zone and always produces lots of cherries, as you can see, but I did see the blackbirds on it yesterday, so let's get all the ripe ones off right now. When I first planted my forest garden, I did plant it with herbs in mind. So I have comfrey here that I had just learned how to make tinctures with. Beautiful yarrow here, the wild oregano, the beautiful burdock that I showed you, and then medicinal berries like the elderberry and the sea buckthorn, along with all of the fruit trees, and then a couple of beautiful plants for color, like these gorgeous roses. Oh my gosh, I completely forgot about my currants, and they are ready to harvest as well. Oh, and there's a little beetle. There you go, little buddy. I tend not to mess around with the bugs in my garden unless something starts to become a serious problem, and the only one that I've ever had an issue with is the cabbage moth. That little beetle there, I've seen a few of them around and they haven't really caused a huge issue, so I just let them be. Currants, yum! So to make my pie filling with these, I don't use a pitter or anything like that because they are so small. I just take the seeds out with my fingers, kind of mushes them up a little bit, but that's not a big deal when you're just making pie filling. Oh my gosh, I forgot about my other cherry tree in behind. I have another one that's called Cupid, And there's a few cherries on there that we need to pull off as well. So I don't think I am going to actually stay out here to fully harvest this. I think I'm going to give my lungs a break and go inside and process all of the broccoli and cauliflower that we have, and then come out and do these a little bit later. We have air purification going in the house and fans going in the house because of course the house has to be completely shut up when it's smoky like this. Wonder how many jars of cherry pie filling I'm going to get out of this. Okay, back in the house, out of this smoke, and a little bit later on today I'll come down and get the rest of the currants. And I think I want to make currant jelly, but I'll figure that out later. Happy with my little harvest here. There's still a ton left. I bet you I have 50 plants left that still have to mature. I have all that cauliflower that I planted a little bit later, so that's not going to be ready for another couple weeks, plus all of the heads that hadn't quite headed out big yet. So it should be a really good year for broccoli and cauliflower. I'm having deep regrets not wearing my ventilating mask. One of the things about smoke like this is if you don't wear a proper mask that's actually designed to filter particulates, the little tiny particulates that are in the air, if you wear an ill-fitting mask, it actually causes you to breathe more deeply and breathe all those little particulates down deep into your lungs. And I only wear the proper smoke mask, the big ventilated one that closes off all the air, if it's really, really bad. And it's really, really bad. And I should have done that because I am not feeling very well now at this point, which is very unfortunate since I have a massive amount of preserving to do. So let that be a lesson to myself, not to cut corners when it comes to my health. It's not something that I generally do, which is one of the reasons I live the lifestyle that I live, but sometimes I make a bad judgment call, and that was not a good judgment call on my part. So I'm gonna pull out my ventilator mask for chores later and wear that because that was not fun. These are some of the most beautiful heads of cauliflower I have ever grown. Look at that beauty. And the broccoli is also looking gorgeous. These aren't massive heads of broccoli, but they're still really nice. So my plan with all of this cauliflower and broccoli is to freeze dry most of it. I am going to freeze in the deep freeze, just normal freezing, some of it, but I want to freeze dry most of it. So what I'm going to do, because my freeze dryer is currently full of the blueberries that I put in there this morning, which do take quite a long time, even though we did prick all of them. One of the tricks that I saw in the comments of my last video is to pulse them through your food processor before putting them in the freeze dryer, and that can make it go a lot faster. Sadly, I didn't see those comments until after I had already filled my freeze dryer, but that's going to take probably at least 24, if not 36 hours. So in preparation for that and not wanting these vegetables to start degrading, I am going to get them all chopped up, blanch them, and flash freeze them in the freezer. So all I'll do is I will freeze them right on the freeze dryer trays along with cookie sheets, because I'm going to have too much for the 4 freeze dryer trays that I have, and then just freeze them that way, and then I'll just put them in bags and I'll run them through the freeze dryer as I have available space. The other thing that we need to do today is to make a whole bunch of blueberry pie filling. So in order to make pie filling, you need to use something called Sure Gel. A lot of recipes that you'll look up online will call for cornstarch, but cornstarch is no longer considered safe because of the way that it can clump in your canned product, and the heat can't get right through it, and it can cause areas that are not fully processed in your canned goods, which can make them unsafe. So what I'm actually going to do is to just can my blueberries in a light syrup, and this suggestion came to me from Daryl. He is a longtime subscriber of my channel. Hi Daryl, thank you very much for the suggestion. And then I'll just add the cornstarch when I want to make my pie filling. The other thing that we're gonna do is take these cherries This is all that I ended up with from all those cherries that I picked outside. They've already been pitted. I'm going to make a homemade PopTart, like a large PopTart for my kids out of that. So we're gonna make some pie filling with that. What else do we have to do? We have to finish jarring up some of the herbs that I just took out of the freeze dryer. We have some dried basil here that I need to get jarred up. I did just finish jarring up the sage, and then we also have all of that tarragon that we picked the other day. It's nice and freeze dried that I need to get jarred up, and I think that is it, and that's a lot. So we better get to work. Since the canner takes a bit of time, canning blueberries is pretty easy. We can just use the steam canner. We don't need to use the pressure canner for it. And I think they have to process for around 10 minutes or so, give or take. Let me just double check that. It's actually 20 minutes for blueberries, so good thing I double checked that. Like I mentioned in one of my previous canning videos, no matter how long I have been canning, I still always have to double check my times. Oftentimes I'm pretty close, sometimes bang on right, but sometimes I'm as off as I was just then by 10 minutes. So I am going to get my syrup. So I have my hot water over here, and I'm just going to add a couple of cups of sugar to this. I don't usually measure my sugar for my syrups. I just add it and taste it, and then when it gets to the sweetness that I want, and this is a light syrup, so I'm not going to be using a ton, maybe just a couple of cups to that much water. And I'm using evaporated cane sugar, which can give your syrup a little bit of a golden color, so just be aware of that if you are going to use organic evaporated cane sugar. Then I'm going to grab my clean jars over here, and now that my syrup's ready, I'm going to get another pot of water on the stove going for blanching our veggies before they go in. And when we're blanching them, I'll explain to you why I'm blanching and how I do that. Going to fill our jars with our washed berries, and I'm going to fill these right up within an inch of the top. Oh, hi.
Hello.
I didn't expect you back already. And then we will top these off with our light syrup, debubble our jars, and pop these in the canner. And then as this batch is going through, we'll get our broccoli and our cauliflower all blanched. So the nice thing about doing this is we could just open up a jar of berries and even just eat those berries plain if we wanted to. Or I can add a little bit of cornstarch and heat them up and make a pie filling, which is my plan for most of this, for winter pies, because they taste so, blueberry pie just tastes so fresh. Or we can drain the juice out, and I can't remember if it was Daryl that suggested this or if it was someone else, and use that juice for other things, even for like flavoring kombucha or something like that. Thank you, honey. And then use the berries in muffins or breads or something like that. Oh, I guess I still need my funnel. So now we'll top off with our syrup. Okie dokie, now we will debubble. It always surprises me how much air actually gets trapped in there. So debubble, and then if your headspace isn't right, and mine needs to be around 3/4 of an inch for this, and then you need to top it off with a little bit more liquid. And then we'll lid these up and get them right into the canner. Turn this up to high and wait until the dial comes to our elevation, which is the dark green right here. So we're going to cut up our veggies and put them in there for about 3 minutes or so. And then we're gonna cool them down really quickly in some ice water. Sometimes that's a step I do, sometimes it's a step I skip. And then we'll put them on trays and freeze them in the freezer. You can put them right into bags if you want to. The one disadvantage of that is they will kind of clump together a little bit, which is fine if you're putting them into portion-sized bags. But if you're wanting to take a little bit out and then put them back in the freezer again, it's much better to do the flash freezing method. So I'm going to start with the cauliflower and do the cauliflower and broccoli separately. Although for most recipes that I use cauliflower and broccoli for, I mix them up. But this gives me a little bit more flexibility. This is just such gorgeous cauliflower. I find that people get really turned off by the worms in broccoli and cauliflower. And I've told this story before, so you may have heard it before, but for those of you that are new, it's worth telling again. When I had one of my first gardens, I wasn't familiar with worms in vegetables at all. And I packed my husband a lunch, and I was really, really proud because the salad that was in it and the cut up broccoli and cauliflower were from my garden. And it was the first time, and I was really excited about it. And he came home from work, and I was like, so how was the salad? And he said, well, when I opened up the container, there was 6 worms on the very top of all of the vegetables. So we ended up throwing it away. And I was, of course, thoroughly mortified because he opened it up in the lunchroom, and it wasn't just him that saw the worms in the salad. So I've been fairly meticulous about making sure that I don't have worms in my broccoli and my cauliflower ever since. I mean, honestly, it doesn't bother me that much. I mean, I personally don't want to eat a worm, but it doesn't bother me to see one. I haven't found any in here as of yet, but these ones were under cover. And, oh no, these ones weren't actually. The cauliflower weren't under cover. I forgot, the broccoli were. But so far, nothing, which is great. It was definitely a much better year for cabbage moths than it was last year. The reason that I covered all my broccoli and my cauliflower, most of it this year, was because last year was absolutely insane. I had this great idea that I was going to pay my kids, I think it was 10 cents a moth. So they went out to the garden, and each of them over a day caught something like 60 moths a piece. So it was an expensive day. Definitely worth it to get rid of that many cabbage moths, but this year, fortunately, it hasn't been a big issue. There's been a few, but not a ton. Oh, here's a little worm. I can show you what they look like. See that little green worm there? So that will go to my chickens. That's pretty funny.
It's true.
So a couple of my kids are going to pitch in and help get all of this broccoli chopped up while I am preparing the cauliflower over here. Yeah, it doesn't take too long. Broccoli is pretty easy to cut, isn't it?
Yeah.
Okay, so I wanted to get all this done, and this is going to go into a pot of boiling water. So I know this sounds awful, but even if there are any worms that I did miss, which I don't think I have, I've been looking very carefully, but if I have, then they'll float to the top and I can pull them out. Okay, so I'm going to run this into our blanching water because it's getting pretty darn full. The purpose behind blanching has to do with the enzymes in a vegetable. So if I were to take this vegetable and I were to stick it straight into the freezer, there's enzymes in it that would affect the color and the texture of the fruit or vegetable. And in the case of broccoli and cauliflower, it makes it really tough, and then it doesn't cook up nicely after. If you cook them, like I'm doing right now, for just a few minutes, it alters the enzymes. I'm not sure about all the science behind it, but it alters the enzymes enough that that does not happen, and they will thaw, they will freeze nicely and thaw and have good flavor. So that's why it is recommended to do that. And then these ones that have started to turn purple a little bit, we will eat these ones up fresh. So I am going to put my strainer inside a pot. And the reason for that is because all of this hot water, I'm just going to dump, whoops, I'm just going to reuse so I don't have to heat up my pot right from cold again. this will go back on the stove and we'll do our next round. And into the freezer. So I am skipping the ice bath step. And these will continue to cook a little bit, but I kept that in mind and blanched them just for a couple minutes instead of the 3 minutes that's recommended. Pardon me, honey? Get through the rest of the broccoli here, and the broccoli over here. And then I'll come back with you and we will make the cherry PopTart thing that I'm gonna make for the kids. I have some very exciting news, my friends. The smoke has cleared out so much overnight and I could not be happier about it. So I did finish up doing the blueberries and I ended up with 13 quarts because one of them didn't seal, which was my fault because I used a lid that I had used on some dry goods and apparently the seal wasn't good on it. So needless to say, I ended up with 13 quarts of the blueberries, which is great. I haven't made the PopTart yet. We're gonna go up to the house and do that in a couple of minutes. And a little bit later, we're gonna head up to the cabin and check it out. It is fully finished being insulated. It has been quite the thing because Dan has had to plane down the 2x4s. Well, they're not 2x4s, they're just milled lumber. So they're probably like 3x2 or something like that. Anyway, he's had to plane some of them down in order to have them the right size to be able to put the plywood and the drywall on. He's decided he's actually going to put some 3/4 inch plywood on the whole entire inside underneath the drywall. Because the building is so old and it was never built properly, he wants to make it solid enough so that if it does move and flex in the winter time, it's not going to wreck the drywall. I forgot the BT that I have up at my house. So BT is an organic insecticide that I am going to spray on my cabbages. As you can see, I do have some netting over top of a lot of my brassicas, but I put it on a little bit too late. If you're going to use netting, it's a really good idea to put it on right after you plant your plants because those butterflies can come along, lay little eggs on them even when the plants are really tiny, and then it gets ahead of you. Having the netting has definitely made a huge difference to the number of worms that I have, but I still have some. So I'm gonna go give them a really good spray. Kids are going over to Grandma's to have pizza for dinner tonight, so it's gonna be a really nice afternoon. Okay, so this is the insecticide that I'm using, and I've just mixed it up in my spray bottle here, and I'm going to uncover these cabbages in this row because these are the ones that are getting some nibble marks on them. Let me show you. You can see all that. I used BT last year and it was super, super effective. Some pretty cabbages forming here. These ones are Copenhagen market cabbages. Looking lovely. Look at that. That is a cabbage moth trapped underneath this, which means I have a gap somewhere. Ah, there's another one. So with this stuff, you want to spray it on the underside of your leaves, and you want to do it on a day that you are not going to have rain so it doesn't just all wash off. It's extremely effective. My garden is needing another weed whacking on the pathways to make it look all neat and tidy again. All right, let's go inside and make that cherry PopTart. My goodness, it is toasty out there. So the recipe that I'm using is from Half Baked Harvest. Tegan Gerard is somebody that I follow joyfully. She posts the most fabulous recipes. She's actually the only food blogger that I follow, but I love her and I even bought one of her cookbooks. Okay, so this one is called Giant Frosted Strawberry PopTart. We're gonna do a cherry PopTart today. So we need 1 cup of all-purpose flour and 1.5 cups of whole wheat flour. I guess we're using some lard since it seems I am out of butter. Either that or it's buried so far underneath all of the meat that we just brought home from the butcher that I can't find it. And we're just gonna mix that in. Technically, you're not supposed to use your hands when you're making pastry because your hands are warm and you want to keep the lard or butter, whatever fat you're using, nice and cold, but I'm gonna do this pretty quick. Okay, now that it is all mixed up, we're gonna add about 1/3 cup of water, cold water, 1 tablespoon at a time until this forms a ball. And then we're going to divide it into 2 even balls. So this is supposed to be a rectangle. It's just going to be whatever shape it turns into as I get it to the right thickness. Just a little bit of vanilla and about 1/2 cup of sugar. And just going to cook this down a bit and then give it a mash. I might add a little bit of cornstarch to make it more like a pie filling. Actually, let's mash those up right now. So I'm just making a little bit of a cornstarch slurry to add to our cherries. I didn't add a lot of sugar to that, so there's still a lot of tartness. But I am going to glaze this PopTart with a little bit of frosting, so that'll counteract the tartness of the cherries. We're going to fill our PopTart with our pie filling. So I'm just gonna fold the edge over a little bit and then I'll mash it down with a fork to try to keep the sides sealed. It's kind of like a giant hand pie. Okay, now we'll prick the top. All right, into the oven. It's time to clean up the kitchen. That has to bake for 30 minutes. And I was supposed to chill it for an hour in the fridge, but since my fridge has bit the dust and there's not a lot of room, and my freezer is absolutely packed, I decided to opt out of that step. This is what our blueberries looked like, by the way. Okay, we're gonna stop now, take a break, and I'll be back with you again to take you out to the cabin and show you where we're at with the cabin and to show you how our homemade PopTart turned out. So we'll see you in a few. Turned out so pretty. So I am just going to drizzle a little bit of this on here. And cut into it. See how it is. It's delicious. This is so tasty. A million times better than a store-bought PopTart, but actually not dissimilar in flavor. It still has that really yummy PopTart flavor, and look at how nice and flaky that crust is. Turned out so good. Okay, before we sign off on today's video, I did want to give you an update on the cabin. Okay, so we've got this wall. When I say we, I mean this guy. Has this wall almost done. So you can see here, this is where he was needing to use the planer on to get everything actually level and true. We have back under here all done, up there partially done, and he is just working on getting this wall all trued up so that he can get the insulation in and start getting the boarding on. So these, is this what these are actually for?
Yeah, so the ones that are proud, I have to plane down. And then the ones that are growing in, I have to shim out with something.
Oh, okay.
So use the
Use these?
pegboard.
Nice, that's smart. So we're at the point now where once this tedious work is done, how long do you think it's gonna take at this point?
It's pretty slow.
It's pretty slow, yeah, especially just with one guy, hey? It is slow, but that's okay. Slow and steady is not a bad thing. Yeah, and tedious, yeah. So we will keep you updated with it, and then we'll do a full tour once we're all finished. We have a Blueberries power system that we're going to be installing in there, and we'll take you on a whole installation of that so that you can see it all and check it all out. All right, my friends, I am going to go feed my kids that homemade Pop-Tart. I hope that you enjoyed today's video, and I look forward to seeing you next time. Bye.